Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Angel of her horse, Lizzie. Lizzie is a 15-year-old Hanoverian thoroughbred cross who evidently was a broodmare most of her life. And Angel has just started her about 8 months ago, she says. And she's done quite a good job with her up until now. The walk here is starting to look pretty good, stretching into that contact. Now, this is a horse that you might want to consider, just having watched this whole video, you might want to consider working her in a shambo. It might help her a little bit to get her neck stretched out a little further in front of you. But you're getting the job done here in the side rein. So if you don't do that, I think you'll get the job done here. And just know that most of your riding difficulties are coming from her just needing to develop more before you actually do much riding. So getting back to the lunging here, this is all looking quite good. The walk, she's stretching into it pretty nicely here. Could be even stretched a little more into it. So what you want to do with the side reins, as she starts to stretch down, we do need to start to lengthen them. So once you get her so she will stretch all the way into the length that you have, we do want her to have a little more length, because once again, the trouble with side reins is they get to a point, and if they can go further, they'll start to curl back behind the bridle a little bit, and that's not what we want to do. So when you see her doing that, it's time to lengthen the side reins a little more. And once again, that's why we like to using the shambone sometimes on some of these very undeveloped horses, that it really helps them get over their back and stretch their neck all the way down and out, as opposed to just cranking it over sort of from the shoulder. But we want the horse to really lengthen from the shoulder, kind of being the point. But once again, this is not bad what you're doing here. This is starting to look like a pretty effective walk, pretty nice and rhythmic, and she's staying relaxed into that. Now, she says this is quite a nervous horse, being part thoroughbred, and that's very typical. And the biggest danger that we have to watch out for when we work hot horses is that we don't get them even hotter by getting them more and more fit. So like a thoroughbred horse, you can lunge for a couple of weeks and all of a sudden it seems like it's ready to run around the track, and race. But warm blood horses, not so much. So depending on the kind of horse we're working, if we have the kind of horse that's sluggish, then we need to build up some more cardio work, so to speak, and get them a little more so they can just work for a more extended period of time and have a little more energy. But with the hot ones, we have to do just the opposite, and that is do less work. And be sure that everything that we're doing is really working on getting them under control, as well as just getting them tired enough to ride. Once again, that's the big take home about lunging, is that we're not just trying to wear the horse out in the lunge line, as so many people are doing. Once again, when you go on the circuits these days and you see, since they've become so adamant about the drug testing for horses, we see people just wearing them out. We see a lot of the horses, if you go down on the Florida circuit, you'll see horses out at 5 o'clock in the morning starting to lunge, and some of them for hours and hours to get them calm enough to go in the classes. So that's very counterproductive, obviously, to the length of the horse. I mean, if you're having to lunge for that many hours, it's definitely going to wear your horse's legs out and put a lot of stress on them. So once again, once you learn to work correctly, no matter how long the first couple of lunge sessions might take you, we want to get it down to where it's only taking about 10 minutes or so to lunge a horse, 10 minutes on each side, and getting down to the point where it's only, after some months with me, I'm usually only lunging them 4 or 5 minutes at a time, as you see from some of my videos. So being sure that when we're lunging, we're working for control and not just to wear the horse out, that we get the right set of muscles working. So you're definitely doing that here. This walk is actually quite good. Once again, it could be stretched down a little more in the walk. And as I said, as she starts to stretch down, you might want to experiment with trying to lengthen those reins a little bit to help her just get further out and down, as opposed to what we don't want her to do is go over and then curl back like that, because she kind of curls back a little bit. So when she starts doing that is when we want to get the side reins a little bit longer, so the horse is able to stretch down and out more. Once again, that's why we often use the shambone. And this would be a good thing to do with this horse. I suggest that you watch the videos on how to use a shambone and how it's correct adjustment, and how we teach the horse how to use it without getting the horse crazy. That's the one danger with the shambone, is that sometimes horses are very sensitive to pole pressure. So the more sensitive horses are, the more slowly we bring all this equipment into play, so to speak. But what you're doing here is not bad at all, actually quite good. So I'm liking what I'm seeing here, other than those few things that she could stretch out more, and certainly the walk could be more active. But really, this is pretty good for a horse that you've been working only the short time you have. Now remember that a horse that's been, a broodmare, especially a broodmare, and especially around here where people tend to have broodmares sitting in a paddock and not out in 100 acres of grass, which is where they should be. So they become kind of like couch potatoes, and that's one of the big dangers of raising horses in that way too, is that Horses should develop with their noses on the ground, eating grass, moving over a lot of territory. And that way they keep moving all the time. But unfortunately here, where nobody has any grass, or very few people have grass, it's very hard to achieve that. So that's also what we have to put back in the lunging. So a lot of these horses, by the time we start them, have been inactive for years. As you said, this one was 15 when you're starting her and been a broodmare. Now, having been a broodmare, she doesn't look as bad as many of them. A lot of times, once again, the weight of the foal starts dragging their backs down with the older ones. And it can really do damage to the horse, which is just like a person. Every time, you have a baby, if you don't get yourself back in shape before the next one, you're probably going to gain another 10 pounds and start having back problems and this sort of thing if you don't keep yourself fit. Well, horses are exactly the same way. So getting here in the trot work, we can see that what happens once we go to the trot is it gets a little stiff there, but that was really good. He starts to come down into it quite nicely, that is, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now she gets to a pretty good place. Remember when you're lunging, see how this horse is kind of going, you want to try to keep the slack out of that rein a little more. And I like the fact that you're keeping on a big circle, but I want you to keep that slack out and work to get both ends of the horse on the same circle so that she doesn't pull the shoulders out. Like right now, she's kind of going with her shoulders a little bit to the outside of the circle that the hind legs are on. You can see that as she comes around there. So that in that case, we want to take a little shorter contact with the rein and get the horse moving away from the whip a little more so that the hindquarters swing a little bit to the outside so we get both ends on the horse on the same circle. Now, the reason that's so important is once we do that, a horse that's going with its shoulders to the outside is evading putting the inside hind leg under its body, which is kind of like doing a leg heel or a shoulder in, which is the first step to getting a horse to lift its back. So that you could just be a little more effective by doing that. Once again, you've got too much slack in the rein. We never want the rein on the ground like that. If the horse were to leap in the air, and believe me, I've seen this many times, and very quickly hook a leg over that line, you would have a problem. So always trying to keep the slack out of the line so you have an unbroken line, just like when we ride from your hand to the horse's mouth. Remember, correct lunging is just really like riding from the ground is all that it is. You have contact with the rein, with your rein hand, and the whip is your leg, of course. And people say, well, the whip isn't on the horse all the time. Well, neither should your leg be. Your leg should only touch the horse. That is, it lies quietly on the side of the horse, but that's all it should do. It should not be constantly gripping the sides of the horse. That's what, once again, will make a nervous horse get even more nervous, and one that is very dull, it will make them even more dull. But this is getting into a pretty good trot, and she is starting to stretch pretty well here at times. And that's what we're looking for when we get under saddle, and that's kind of what you're missing in the under saddle work. Now, she's still not quite there. You go like that. That's what we're looking for when she stretches like that. But once again, this would be more effective if you kept that line, keep the slack out of the line, maybe work her even a little closer to you so you're able to ask her to move the hindquarters away from. Once again, you can see how she comes around that corner, how the shoulders are pulled to the outside of the circle. So if you just were to shorten that rein and bring her in just a little bit, then you'd be able to control the hindquarters a little more and get them swinging under, which will help you to get the horses back up, which is the point of everything we're trying to do here. But once again, this horse does get to a pretty good place here when she starts swinging about there, before she pops back up again. Now that's where you could be correcting that. If you took that slack out of that line, and every time she comes up, you'd want to just lift your whip up a little bit and send the horse on and forward till it stays consistently, just like you would if you ride. Remember, the way we correct horses when we ride, if you learn how to ride correctly, is from the back to the front, which means that instead of stopping the horse in front to try to create the frame or pulling the neck back into the body, we push the hind end deeper into the body. Now, right there is what you're looking for. Now, that's the first time that she's really engaged correctly in the trot. But see how she comes back up. Now, you'd be able to correct that more, once again, if you keep the horse working a little closer to you and keep that slack out of the line. So every time the head comes up there, you would want to just lift your whip and send the horse on forward. That's all there is to it. So your lunging will be a lot more effective when you get that into position. But this horse is getting into a good place. Like right there is where we want it. But see, she comes up. But because you have so much slack in the rein dragging on the ground there, you're not able to correct that quickly enough. So once again, you just want to keep that slack out of the rein, and every time her head comes up, you just send her forward, which is the same thing you would do if you were riding. Every time she stops coming through, you send the horse through from your legs and ask the horse to come deeper into the body. Remember, by pulling the front end of the horse, all you can do is slow the horse down, which a lot of people mistake as collection even, when they're going very slow and the neck pulled in, but that's not collection at all. has to happen from behind. Remember, collection is only one thing. It means one thing. Once the horse is in working gaits, it can work over its top line. Collection is the degree to which the horse lowers the 3 joints of the leg and maintains that lowering throughout all 3 gaits. That's the quality of the level of collection. So once again, that was pretty good. You got into a good place where I said it, but it wasn't consistent enough, and that's probably why, it's pretty inconsistent when you ride as well as the horse's back is probably a little bit weak. So once again, I want you to just keep that slack out of the rein, and every time the horse's head comes up, you just send her on a little forward, even if she gets a little quick. And now once again, you'd want to bring her onto a little smaller circle. As soon as you get the horse to stretch again, then you let the horse back onto the larger circle. So the larger circle being the reward. Just like when we have a horse now that wants to get quick or wants to break gaits into the canter. Instead of jerking on the reins, you want to just gradually bring the horse in onto a smaller circle. The smaller circle will be uncomfortable for the horse, and the horse will probably drop back to the trot with just a little bit of encouragement. Once again, this trot's looking pretty good at times when he stretches all the way like that. That's what we're looking for. But once again, you see how you have that slack in the rein. So you need to keep that slack out, and every time the head starts to come up, you simply lift your whip and send the horse on. That is, send the horse into the contact with the bridle. Now that's looking quite good there, despite the fact that the lunge line is too long. So you're getting good moments of what I'm saying here, but you're just not, they're not staying consistent as we'd like, because you're losing too much contact with the horse as you're lunging there with the rein. By the time she does something wrong, you're able to recorrect it, but just too many steps in between of her not going perfectly. Now that's really good there, where you have her right there. That's where we'd like the horse to stay. And once again, you see how those muscles change. You see how when she pulls her head up and you see that neck that's all developed on the underside of the neck. This horse has very little top line. Just remember, however, that it takes at least a year to establish a top line on a horse and 2 years to confirm it to the point that you can begin to develop real collection. That's what it takes with horses that a sort of normal horse. Actually, looking at this one, I'm not seeing anything wrong with this horse, and actually it's quite a nice mover. And I look forward to seeing you in person once you get her in the trailer. As she said, she's going to bring her down when she can get her trailered, so that would be good. But in the meantime, once again, that's the biggest thing, is just getting that slack out of the rein there. That's a little better there. When you got the slack out of the rein, you were able to more quickly. There's where we want her. Right there is really a good place for this horse. Just like that. And once again, once you get that really consistent, then we'd want to start lengthening the side reins a little bit. That's pretty good right there. So only if you see the horse curling back. In other words, once the horse starts to really stretch down, if you see the face coming behind the vertical, so to speak, then you'd want to lengthen those side reins so the nose can go out and down so that we won't interfere with the horse stretching from the shoulder. Now remember, in this first 2 years of work, what is going to happen with any horse that's correctly trained is this stretching is going to actually pull the withers up through the shoulders. And the horse will change and have a much more uphill stance. And that's what actually allows collection to happen later on. Once you achieve that and the withers pull up, the base of the spine there where it connects to the withers will actually change and lift. And then we'll get a much more feeling of a wave picking us up and carrying us when we have the horse correctly engaged across its back. So you're getting some really good stuff here on the lunge line. Right there is exactly where we want it. We just want to be able to keep it consistent. And once you're able to keep it more consistent, I think you'll find that this will all translate into the work under saddle a lot better. Same thing here, just too much slack in the rein, but you're still getting to a good place. And this horse is really nice. Right there, the horse is nicely swinging over its back. You can see how relaxed the underside of the neck gets, but also watch the hind legs and watch how the hock makes a more perfect circle as the horse stretches down and is able to move up through the back. That is, the correct muscles take over instead of the pulling muscles. When you see a horse that has a big, thick bottom side of its neck, what we call being ewe-necked, that's a horse that's been pulling itself with its shoulders its whole life. So we need to change that. And once again, unfortunately, because so many horses here in the West grow up on little tiny paddocks and little tiny, dirt lots. Even the one the size of this ring is still just a dirt lot. And when you see horses being fed, even if they're in a big dirt place, they're all just standing around the feed tub waiting for the next feed to come, unless there's some shade they might be moving into. So once again, as far as a horse goes, what's going to make in raising a horse having a 200 by 200 pen versus a 24 by 24, if neither of them have any grass in them, the horse is not going to have its head down moving all day long, which is what we want horses to do in pasture. Once again, that's why Kentucky is such a famous place. That's where I grew up, because most of the year most years you can pretty much graze horses all year round. About once every 5 years or so, they get a little bit of snow that lasts for a couple of weeks, but that's about it. So it's all about those horses moving correctly. Now, right there, this horse looks really beautiful, and this is really a great project for you. And the fact that the horse is 15 to me doesn't make any difference. In fact, it's probably better if the horse hasn't done anything. It hasn't been damaged, so unless its back has been so damaged from having babies, which sometimes if people let them go too far, they can get really swayback. But even a very swaybacked horse, we've been able to bring some back that were as old as 27 with a complete, horseshoe-shaped back, and been able to bring them up and level again by doing this work. So know that you can improve almost any horse. If it's sound, it can improve. Starting off here in the walk, this is pretty good walk here. And I think the situation for you here, once we go to the trot, it becomes a little questionable. So what I would do if I were you, not that I'm telling you not to trot, but do lots and lots of walk work. Now it's a pretty rhythmic walk, but we still want the horse to stretch down and lengthen from the base of the neck a little more. But it is a pretty good 4-beat walk there. Now there's a little hesitancy in those back legs a little bit. You see how she kind of picks them up they're a little bit stiff coming out of the ground. The more you get the horse to stretch, the more you're going to see that go away, and the horse will have a much more fluid look to its walk. But once again, this is not bad. You've done a really good job with this horse on your own. I look forward to seeing this one in person, and you. So once again, all this is pretty good, but it needs to be stretched a little more. You can see how she's starting to give up the underside of the neck, and you can watch the muscles there on the top of the neck beginning to light up. There, that's better. So the longer she goes, the better the hind end works. Like that. And just know that there isn't a lot of point in doing a lot of trot work. Once again, there's no point in doing anything wrong. So do what you can do right, and then gradually try to build that onto the next phase. Like your walk work here is pretty good. She could still be stretched a little deeper than she is, but she's staying pretty nicely over her back, and the walk is a nice 4-beat swinging walk. So there's some improvement to be made here, but this is a pretty good walk. She could still stretch down a little deeper yet, but this is in the right direction, certainly. So just know that, there's just no point in doing things that we're going to have to undo. So if you find that, like I saw in this video, most of the trot work is just not quite there yet. So that means she needs more lunging work and more work in the walk. Before you're going to be able to get that. But you're going to be very soon. Now, I'm not telling you not to try it, certainly do, but don't trot away for a half an hour with her upside down. It won't do you any good. Coming back to the walk and doing another half an hour of walk stretching will do her good. So remember, that's basically the idea. I used to rehab a lot of horses and train professional fox hunting horses. And when they come back from the winter, from their summer layoff, we start out with just a month of nothing but walking. We would hack them with them stretched all the way down, get them working over their backs, and slowly bring them back into the full work to bring them into condition for the hunting season. And that's basically what you have to do here anytime you have a horse that's been left off. So remember, just like a person, we start to lose muscular condition or muscle tone after 2 weeks of inactivity. So you can imagine a horse like this, who's been in a paddock for years and years, having babies, is going to have very little top line. But you've done a really good job with this. I mean, this is already much improved. Once again, this walk is pretty good, but needs to stretch a little deeper. It's just not quite getting all the way there where we'd like to get it to. Now, in that case, remember when you walk, you want to use your legs alternately, so the horse knows the difference between your walk work and your trot work. So when you want to trot, you use both legs together, right behind the girth. When you want to want the horse to walk out longer, then we use the legs alternately. So if you walk along and feel the inward swing of the side of your horse, you'll feel your legs swinging in and out as the back swings. So the time to ask for the horse for a bigger walk is as that leg is swinging in. That will time your leg with the moment that the inside hind leg, or the leg on that same side, is about to come forward. Now, the other thing I see here is just the length of your stirrup. I wouldn't mind seeing you with a little longer stirrup. This is really quite short, and I think you're a good enough rider to ride with a little longer stirrup because your foot is really quite high up on the horse, and you would like to get your calf down lower for schooling And you know what a good rider does is they ride one length for flat work and then they shorten them up when they're going to jump and gallop. But you're kind of riding here at a galloping length. So I would at least take these stirrups down at least 2 or 3 holes and get yourself more leg down the horse. So remember, the shorter your stirrup is, the more security you have, but the less leg you have to use on the side of the horse. And you kind of end up, as you're doing here, you're not using the calf of your leg, you're kind of using your heel all the time. So we need to get that leg longer. And once again, then you want to feel that inward swing. Once it gets longer, you'll have an easier time being able to use your legs alternately to encourage that longer swing in the walk. But once again, you're doing quite a good job here all on your own. Now, I still need her to stretch a little deeper than she's doing, but this is not a bad walk here. It's in the right direction. She just needs to stretch a little bit deeper into it. So for instance, you might put this as a rule in your mind, don't go into the trot on any given day when you're with your riding work until you can get the horse stretched all the way out and down. And if you can't get her stretched all the way out and down, I mean her nose should practically be on the ground when you get it right, then probably don't go into the trot. Wait till you can. And the day that you can get her to stretch all the way down a little deeper and take the contact down and really stretch over her back and pull up through that withers, then you're going to see that your trot work will come much more easily. And all of a sudden it will just be there without any problem whatsoever. But once again, you've done a very good job doing this all on your own. Once again, a good walk here, just not quite stretching. There you go, you're working on it. So remember, to get the stretch, what we do is create activity from our legs. That is the desire to move forward. You feel that move forward to the bridle, and you simply have contact with the horse, but you're never trying to force the horse's head down. The horse will try to get it. You have just slightly more than the weight of the rein when we take contact, but that is even still always softening the horse. That is, it's never just becoming rigid like a fixed rein. We're never just fixing our hand against the mouth of the horse. And if you ever work with a trainer who tells you to do so, I highly suggest you run in the opposite direction, because that's somebody who actually does not know how to ride and is trying to ride the front end of the horse by pulling the horse's head down. And that's just bad riding for anything. Remember, a good rider rides from the back to the front. Everything begins from the back. So when you want to get a horse on the bridle, the first thing you do is put your leg on, not take hold with your hand. So you have to have something moving through the horse. Then all you simply do is find that place where the horse can lift its back, and then you're there. Then you do nothing at all. So that's the horse's reward. But you can imagine if you're holding against the horse's mouth all of the time, it's going to not be very happy in the work that you're doing. So that's what you want to do, is just continue to create more activity. Get your stirrups a little bit longer. As I said, you can have a little more calf of your leg on the horse because you have a nice long leg, so let's use it. So you're not kind of hampering yourself here by having such short stirrups. But once again, this is a good walk, but not quite stretched enough. So what you'd want to do here is keep activating the horse with your legs a little more. Feel that impulse go to your hand. The horse will try to find out what to do with that impulse. It'll try to pull on the reins, become tight, whatever. So the moment you feel the horse wanting to go downwards or even test the contact with your hand, by all means, then you let it down. So all you're doing is just simply keeping the other doors shut, but they're not slammed shut against the horse. They're simply, if the horse encounters them, it feels a little bit of resistance of your hand, but never force. Your hands must never take backwards against the mouth of the horse. So for instance, your biceps should never have anything to do with the training of a horse. That is, to be able to hold against its mouth. So use the backside of your arms to keep your arms in the same place, but you don't pull with your biceps. I see riders all the time, I have seen them, who come up and declare what a great riders they are, and they can prove it by what big biceps they have. Well, that should show you that the person doesn't know the first thing about riding, because if you've got big biceps from riding a horse, you're hanging on its mouth. And I guarantee you they're probably not very happy in the process. So once again here, that's what you need to do. Just keep building this as you're doing till we get this horse to stretch a little deeper into the contact. And once again, I wouldn't even try the trot until you can get this horse to stretch all the way down in the walk and get her to really seek that contact down. It's almost there, and it's not bad, but it's just not quite all the way there. When she needs to stretch out, she's really not letting go from the base of her neck and really let that shoulder come and become free, so it can move freely. So we're not bracing the neck. Like when we see these horses in the dressage ring these days who are throwing out their front legs and the back legs aren't coming through, it's because usually the people, what they're doing is they're making the horse kind of half crazy, then bracing the neck against the top part of the shoulders by holding with their hands, and that makes the horse flip the front legs out. But of course, that also destroys the tendons and all those little bones, the navicular and sesamoids inside there that have to take all that weight. So the hind leg doesn't come through, it's going to damage the horse a great deal. Just like if you took, and piled your car trunk full of bricks and overweight it so the car was constantly going with front end stuck up in the air. You can imagine what that would do to all the other parts of the car. They would fall apart very quickly. Well, that same thing is true of horses. A lot of people get very flashy kind of, what they think is flashy kind of position and movement out of horses, but it's always at the expense of the horse, Well, you always got to look behind the ribbons, I tell people, and you ask people, I don't care if they won the Olympic Games, if the horse was dead the next year, there was some problem. So once again, going into this trot work is basically what we see here, just not quite getting the horse all the way there, and that's kind of how it stays in the trot work. So my advice to you to start off with is just don't work this horse under saddle in the trot until you can get her to stretch deeper in the walk, and then you're going to find that the problems here in the trot are going to disappear, because right now you can see how the underside of her neck is very tense. The stride is kind of short. It's a little disconnected. If you look closely, you'll see that the hind and front leg are not moving exactly at the same time. And once again, that's a hallmark of a correctly trained horse, is the hind leg always comes through to the same swinging plane, on the same swinging plane that the front leg is moving on. And when a horse is hollow, there's this slight disparity between the two movements. The hind leg is lagging behind the front leg. And that's how we destroy all the tendons and joints in a horse, by doing that. Because every time the horse throws its front legs out and the hind legs haven't come through, it's going to overflex all the joints in that front leg. And it's also going to overflex the joints of the hock as well, because it puts the wrong angle type of pressure inside those bones of the hock. And once those go, then we have real big problems. So once again, this is going to be a beautiful horse when you get it there. But right here, this, for instance, is just, I would have already come back to the walk. So don't even spend that much time. If you can't get her to soften in a few moments here, then you would just want to go back to the walk and go back in the walk till you get the stretch all the way down and then start it again. But you're really doing a good job, and your position and everything here looks quite good. But once again, because of where she is, she's kind of locked in that position. She's just not quite able to unlock it. You can see how she's kind of bracing her back downwards. And once again, look very closely and you'll see how the front leg and back leg are not moving exactly at the same time. There's a slight hesitation. And that's one of the things that, a rider really has to get an eye for, a trainer, is being able to see that those diagonal pairs, that they never become separated, so to speak, which is what we see in so many badly trained so-called upper-level dressage horses these days. If the horse isn't coming through behind, you're not doing dressage. You're just riding a horse badly. Now, it's getting a little better there, but still, once again, it would have been a lot better had you come back to the walk, and I think that's basically what I see here. So it's just starting to soften a little bit, but when he's softening, all she's doing is just dropping the head over. Remember, what we want to get them to do is to stretch from the base of the shoulder and not just drop the neck over from the middle of the neck. So what we'd like to see you do there is just come back to the walk sooner, and then, try again once you get her all the way stretched down there. So once again, we need about a foot or so more stretch. She should almost have her nose on the ground by the time before you start trotting her. We did see that the horse got there at some of the time on the lunge line, so she's capable of doing it, but she may just simply not be strong enough to carry you in that position. But this is going to be a really nice horse and is well worth you working with. This horse has a lot of potential from what I see here. Really quite a nice mover. And I wouldn't call her overly sensitive. I'd say she looks like she's about right. So once again, just correcting those few things in your lunging work, and then getting the stretch deeper in the walk before you go to the trot work. And once again, if you go around circle 3 or 4 times like you've done here, and she's just sort of stayed locked up in that position, instead of trying to fight that, just come back to the walk and stretch her all the way down. In other words, don't ever try to fight your way through a wall with the horse. Go back to what came before it, because if they can't do what you're asking them to do now, they probably simply weren't developed enough to do so. So this is Will Faerber from Arch Ride. I really enjoyed this. I really look forward to seeing your next one. I think if you improve those few things that I've talked about, you're going to do really, really well with this horse, and she has a lot of potential. So keep up the good work, and lots more walk, and let's see if we can lengthen your stirrups a little bit. It's Will Faerber. See you next time.